Welcome to Wading into Retirement. I'm Mike.
And hi, I'm Laura.
And in today's episode, we do a review of our month-long trip to San Miguel de Allende. Hey everyone, we're back. It's Mike here.
And Laura.
So this could be a long episode.
It could be.
But stay tuned. Do not hit pause. Do not hit the X in your top right to close this window, or you will lose out on valuable information.
Yes.
So we are going to talk about a number of things today. We went to, as you know, San Miguel de Allende for a month. We went for the month of January.
Yes.
And yeah, so we've got a whole bunch of things to talk about. We want to talk about the logistics of our month there. We had some strong goals that we were trying to hit when we were there around residency, around seeing certain areas of town, visiting some other people as well. All of that's going to be talked about in this episode. And at the end, we are going to share our costs as well. So how much did this month cost us? Because that was a big part of what we were trying to figure out in this episode. All right, we're back. So just for your information, this is take 2 because we have a dog circling us as we're recording. These are real YouTube problems people need to get used to.
Puppy paws.
So back to the overview of our trip. So we arrived on New Year's Eve into Querétaro Airport, and we had a driver arranged, and he took us to our landing place, which was an Airbnb, which we will talk about a little bit later on in the episode.
Yes.
So we did get to experience New Year's Eve in San Miguel, and we did have a quick video out about our New Year's Eve experience. What did you think of the lights and the overall ambiance?
I thought it was fantastic. We got there in late afternoon, and our driver very kindly dropped us off at the grocery store, and it was quite packed. So that was kind of a little bit of an eye-opener. I guess it would be here too, but it felt really rushed. And of course, then we had to land back at our Airbnb, get everything put away. And I quickly realized that we did not have a reservation. So we wanted to get down to the square earlier.
This is for dinner.
Yes, reservation for dinner. So I wanted to get down to the square so that we could at least get a meal into us without having to worry about cooking.
And that didn't go very well. So all of the restaurants were booked. And the ones I think that we did find were really, really expensive,
Yes.
which wasn't
Unexpected.
No, I mean, if we go out for New Year's Eve here, it would be the same kind of situation. So we were probably just being a little naive, thinking we could walk into downtown San Miguel and find a place to eat on New Year's Eve. But we did actually experience street vendors. So they had a bunch of carts lined up in the square. We found one and we tried some, I think it was a hamburger of some sort, of Hawaiian hamburger.
Yes.
It was quite good.
Yes, and the drinks too. And it was nice to sit on the steps and just people watch for a little bit. Everybody was out, most in their finest of finery. And it was just fascinating to watch, the different mariachi bands. There seemed to be even more, and they even seemed more festooned. And it was just beautiful. It really, truly was magical.
Yeah, they just do festivals very well there. You can go down there to the square anyways, any weekend, and there seems to be some reason for having a festival and music and family. And part of the fun for us was trying to figure out what it was that was special on that given night. But yeah, so logistically we were there. I'll put it this way. I was there for 30 days. Laura was there for 14 or 15 days. We had various people visiting us throughout the stay as well. We had made a plan to track all of our expenses to the penny. So that's coming up. Because that was really one of the big things we wanted to figure out on this trip was how much would it cost monthly to live there. And we have a good sense of that now, with some caveats, of course. I think one of the big goals that we had heading into this that we talked about on a previous episode was doing the second part of our residency.
Yes, and we weren't sure how long that was going to take and with the closures for New Year's. So we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time for, especially me, to get my residency and then be able to head back to Canada in that time frame. Because if we didn't have it completed, then it meant starting it all over again, which we really did not want to do.
Yeah, so we had 30 days from our date of entry into the country, which was December 31st, 2023. So how do you think it went? Why don't you give me your perspective on our immigration facilitator, Mayeli, and just the entire process?
I thought it was really good. Like we got down there early. Miele was really kind to have held our place in line. So we were what, fourth and fifth or fifth and sixth, which wasn't too bad. The weather was quite nice, although after the 40-minute walk, it was a little bit chilly just sitting out in the open air. But they did have somebody come by and bring coffee. We had blankets and that type of thing. So I actually thought it went quite smooth as far as getting in. Again, we talk about Mexico time. Things just take a little bit longer sometimes to get through. And the language barrier really wasn't as bad as I would have expected because Miele couldn't come in with us. But it was a lot of sitting and waiting.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me, actually.
Yeah.
So there were a couple things. I thought Mayeli would be coming in and maybe having conversations with the immigration officer to help us if we struggled. That didn't happen. She basically handed us each a file folder with all of our documents in it and said, just hand these to the agent when your name is called. But it was, so it was slow. That was one thing that when we were like number 5 or 6, I was thinking, yeah, we'll probably be out of here in an hour or 2 hours. We were there 4 or 5 hours. It was about an hour per person, I would say, on average. And a lot of it was, well, most of that hour, you just sat there and smiled in front of the agent. Like they did the paper shuffle. They turned to their computer, they reorganized papers, they stamped some, they photocopied them, they came back, they printed some. It seemed like just a huge paper shuffle. But that being said, we left there with our temporary residency cards, and we are good for a year now.
Yes. And it is, for me, it's an emotional thing as well, because we are now temporary residents of another country. And to me, that's actually a pretty big thing. It's not just that we're going there to test out a lifestyle and have a place to retire. We're really going there to absorb the culture and find out if we can learn the language and get along, but be a part of a community. That's the downward goal. So I was a little bit choked up, and I have to admit I gave Mayeli a big hug, and I think she was even a little bit choked up because once again they've welcomed 2 more people into their country.
Yeah, so it was that went well and went as planned. So once that was behind us, I felt like I could exhale.
Yes.
Because I felt a little bit like I was a prisoner and we were on a timeline, and if this didn't work out, we had spent all this time going to the consulate in Ottawa. So that's behind us now. So now we can start to worry about renewing it a year from now.
Yes, life gets in the way.
Yeah. So yeah, we got to go back sometime this December, upcoming December, to do a similar process, which I'm hoping is easier, and it's just kind of a renewal. But there will obviously be funds that have to pass hands again, and because none of this is free either.
Well, and that was actually a good point to bring up about the funds. We thought if we had taken cash, that it would make it go easier, and we found out otherwise. So that was also one of the little things that we were fortunate that we had everything kind of in line. Michael's a planner, thank God, much more so than I think I am. So we had all of our bases covered for the most part, and thank goodness for that.
So in another year, we'll do a video on how to renew your residency. So one of the other things we wanted to do was venture outside of the core city of San Miguel a little bit more than we had in the past.
Yes.
And And we were able to do that. So one of the places we went to was a Totonilco,
Yes.
which we released a video a couple weeks back on that. And that was a good trip. It wasn't that far away from San Miguel, maybe 15-20 minute taxi ride. And yeah, it was a very nice spot, actually a very nice area. I noticed they had a spa there, a hot
Yes.
springs kind of spa in the same area that I think we would probably try if we went back. We were just a little unprepared or didn't know that that was in that area. But
Which means we didn't have swimsuits. And we didn't. But I had also looked at some of the reviews online were not really stellar. And yet when we spoke to the driver and a few others, they were like, oh no, you should really give it a try. So I think we should, in fairness,
Yeah.
give it a try. Check it out. Take a look and see what it ends up being like.
I think relative to some of the others that are in Mexico, the other spa-like places or hot springs, some of those I've seen videos and they look very, very impressive. So I think this may have just been, you know, a mediocre kind of spot. But again, not having been there, who knows, right?
Exactly.
Hey, puppy dog. Again, the dog is trying to make a grand entrance into the video. So the other thing that we wanted to do, and this took a circuitous route, was we wanted to go see San Luis Potosi. And
Yes.
we had,
It all played
I
out.
had contacted Mark and Paulette from Two Travelers in Mexico.
Yes.
Sort of had a connection with them watching their videos and thinking, you know, they're very much like us. I'm pretty sure we'd get along with this couple because this was a little bit outside of certainly my comfort zone, meeting two people that I hadn't met before and going to their house even. So I was glad that Laura was there and that she could carry the conversation. As it turned out, the night before we were supposed to go, I got sick.
Very
So
sick.
let's talk about being sick in Mexico. So it was a bad scene.
It was.
It was both ends for probably 18 hours every 20 minutes. So
I would even say it was probably a little bit longer than that. And to caveat this, we took medications,
Right.
but you don't plan for a 2 full day sickness when you're packing your little bucket of pills.
Yeah.
So we did have stuff. And then my sister came down and she also had stuff, which you had also gone through. And then to try and replace said stuff
yeah.
was interesting.
So at the last minute, I had to email Mark and Paulette and say, we're not going to make it today, which was really disappointing because I really wanted Laura to experience Potosi with me and have her own perspective on that rather than just through my eyes. And again, as I mentioned, Laura's the life of the party. I'm not. So I'm pretty sure it would have been a better interaction if Laura had been there, but that will happen. So Mark and Paulette, I met them at their house. What happened is we had to cancel that day. You had to fly home. And then I rebooked with Mark and Paulette and I went at a different time. So I went on my own. So I met them. They have a beautiful house. They have beautiful dogs, all the things that certainly would have checked all of your boxes, Laura. And we only had a short time. I think I got there around 10 o'clock and I had to leave by 4 p.m. Yeah. So we spent a little bit of time at their house just catching up and, you know, understanding where they came from, how they ended up in Mexico, and similarly on our side. And just really had a connection there. So it was really great to meet Mark and Paulette, definitely. And I think we'll go back and we will meet them again and Laura will finally get to meet them in a proper way. But we went into town. They showed me the downtown core, beautiful city. So it's much larger than San Miguel. But the downtown core is very similar. It still has that colonial feel. I was there on a Sunday. They had all the roads or a big chunk of the roads downtown blocked off to car traffic. So it was only pedestrian traffic, which was nice. Had that same Mexican vibe, I would call it, where people are out doing their things in the squares, walking with their families. Lots of beautiful churches. And we stopped and had breakfast and chatted some more. So overall, it was a very quick experience, but enough to know that I would want to go back and I would want to take you back.
Well, it was hard for me too because I really did want to meet them after watching their YouTube channel. You almost feel like you know them. And I think you're right. I think we are very similar. Paulette is very much a champion of the canine variety, which I feel
Yeah.
I am too. And just the whole experience of what they've gone through to get there. I think they've been very brave because they ended up buying a new build, which I don't know that we're quite that brave to do that. But even just a lot of the things that they talk about are things that we would be interested in: the food, the costs, and just the overall culture of where they are at compared to San Miguel, which I think is probably it's an UNESCO heritage city, so it's a little bit more, would you say, artsy or?
Well, San Miguel, yeah, I think San Miguel's known as being an artsy community. A touch more expensive probably than Potosi. But again, that just depends where you are in the city, and
Yeah,
you can spend whatever money you have in any city, right?
you can, 100%.
But yeah, I guess what caught me the most was it's a large city. So driving into it, I felt like I was driving into any city in Canada or the US for that matter. I mean, it was a highway in, and you knew you were on a highway and you were circling the city. So it had a bigger feel where I don't have that sense in San Miguel. It's almost like you're right upon the city and everything is right there in the valley, I'll call it, inside the ring road. So yeah, it was more of a sprawling metropolis for sure. So it really just depends what you're looking for. I think it was a great place if you wanted all the amenities because it was a larger city, but still had that charm in the downtown core. So certainly something to consider. And remember to always take your sickness medicine. Let's go back to that. So Paulette was nice enough to tell me these are the things you need to go to the pharmacy and buy when you're in Mexico. So she took some pictures and she sent it to me. And I went out and dutifully bought all that. Even though I didn't need it, I was already well over the Montezuma's Revenge or whatever it was that I ended up catching when I was down there. But it's things like that that you learn when you're meeting with other people and their points of view. And so that was really good. It was a good trip. And I can't thank Mark and Paulette enough for hosting me, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Well, with the sickness, it kind of brought home to me, we're planners, and we didn't really have a contingency plan of, okay, what if you do have to go to the hospital? Because after 24 hours of constant, couldn't keep anything down or anything in, it was like, okay, is this going to be a problem? And then what is our next step? And that took me aback, especially since we knew I was going to be coming home after 2 weeks. You were staying on longer. What would have happened if it was you by yourself? I know we always figure these things out, but in the back of my mind, there was a very real, this could be more of a problem than you expect. Mind you, the sense of community is such that I think, you can reach out to people.
Yeah. But that is a good point. That crossed my mind as well. If I would have gotten that sick when I was there alone, it would have been a very desperate feeling because I had to be close enough to a bathroom. There's no way I could have, I think, in the first day, made it to a pharmacy and back without having a problem in the middle of the road kind of thing. So you do think of those kind of things when you're ill. But anyways, so let's talk about costs. So this was one of the things we wanted to look at. So I'll give you some summary numbers and then I will break them down just for comparison purposes. So excluding lodging, these are our total costs for the month. So it came to $55.36 Canadian a day, which was $1,550.07 Canadian. So that's what we spent total, excluding lodging and airfare, which I didn't factor in. So really the numbers we were trying to get at here was what would it cost us if we were already there per month to live? So for our American viewers, that is $41.87 US a day, or $1,172.49 US for the month.
Yes.
So I didn't think that was too bad from a total perspective. So if we had bought a home there and we were living somewhat normally within our means, it's between $1,000 and $1,500 a month.
Well, and we lived well too. Like we did do grocery shopping. We made the pinky promise that we were going to, do most of our own cooking. But with having people come down, it was a lot harder to do, to be quite frank.
We broke the pinky promise day one.
Yeah, we did. We totally did.
You'll see when I get into the detailed numbers that we actually spent quite a bit of money eating out when we were there.
Yes. Well, and we had to really start our grocery shopping kind of from scratch too. There was a few things at the Airbnb, but things like spices, you need.
Olive oil.
Yep, olive oil, coffee, tea.
So I would call those like startup expenses.
Yes.
Because we honestly bought more than a month's supply of some of this stuff, and I just had to leave it behind, and it was, toilet paper, some things like that probably inflated these numbers a little bit.
Yes.
So let's start with groceries. We spent $446.45 Canadian, or $337.70 American for the month on groceries.
And I thought that was a bit on the high side. But it wasn't until we had spent a little bit of time there, we found out when the market days were. And my sister, who came to visit us, we actually went to the market, and things were notably less expensive. So a lot of the fresh fruits and vegetables, tomatoes, things that I would consider staples, I think could be had for a more reasonable price had we shopped more locally.
Yeah, and there was a lot of aha moments. So everybody had said, if you eat or you behave like you do in your home country, it will be just as expensive, if not more expensive, in Mexico. And I think that's true. So there was a couple things that jumped out at me as being expensive. So anything imported, frozen pizza,
ice cream,
the brands that you might be used to eating, like Ben and Jerry's or something like that. Yeah. That kind of stuff was almost 2 times as expensive as it is at home.
Frozen pizza. I couldn't believe the price of frozen pizza.
I spent
you can buy fresh for less.
I spent $15 Canadian, so like $12 American for, a cheap, thin frozen pizza, where, you can get those here quite a bit cheaper, especially on sale.
Yeah.
The fruits, the vegetables, all the produce, that was a lot cheaper down there.
Yes. Yep.
So I think to eat healthy, it would be a lot cheaper down there than it is
here, and
in
more
the US
accessible
or Canada
too.
Yeah.
Like you walked in, and that's the other thing that sort of I always think about, because as we're looking at our diet and trying to eat healthier and more vegetarian, if you will, when you walk in, short aisle for breads and the pastries, and you're right into the vegetables. And I like that's kind of where you start your grocery journey, and you're more likely to pick up a little bit more in that area as well.
So let's move on to eating out. We spent $873 Canadian in restaurants, which is $660 approximately US. So that's a lot. That's more than we usually eat out. I'd say we probably ate out at least half of the meals if you worked it out over the 30 days. Now, a lot of that was because we did have visitors. Your sister came down to visit. My daughter came down to visit. Yep. And each time we had a visitor, you wanted to go out and eat out and show them some good restaurants. So that certainly added to the totals.
And we didn't eat at inexpensive places. Like when I say show off, it was show off really the cuisine of the area. So we did eat at really good restaurants. It wasn't street vendors or, so I think we could have probably cut that cost down a little bit too. But the food was fantastic. We had such good meals. I don't think we had a bad meal in the bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next category was transportation. So we did not have a car when we were there, so we were totally dependent on the local taxi service.
Yep.
And interestingly, you meet the taxi drivers, they give you their card, and you get to have relationships with various ones. So, there was one taxi driver that I used multiple times, and he was able to come get me wherever I was. So that was really convenient. But we spent $173 Canadian or 130 US approximately for the month on transportation costs.
And that's not bad, actually,
No.
because we were going down to the square and we would usually taxi back. Because of where we stayed at Capilla di Piedra, we are
Up on
close
top of a
to
hill.
And there is a grocery store that you can walk to. So we didn't do taxis if we stayed up at that end of town. But for the most part, we would take a taxi at least one way. I think that's the beauty of the city is you do walk a lot. Yes, you're on cobblestones. Yes, there's hills, but you do walk a lot.
I would say we probably averaged one taxi fare a day.
Yes, I would say.
Whether it was, an extended trip or just to get us back up the hill at the end of the day or whatever that happened to be. But yeah, when you think about it, transportation costs in Canadian, 173 a month.
It's nothing.
You can't own a car and put gas in it and pay insurance for it for probably 173 a month. So that's really something to consider, right?
Well, even your bus passes, like we both work where bus passes are subsidized if we lived in the city. And for two of us, it would be at least that. So when you look at that part of it, and this was taxi service, it wasn't on a bus. It was, very much, you just waited and put your hand up.
So the next two categories are a little bit smaller, but I did have them broken out. So I had household items, and this is what I talked about earlier. It's really stuff that it was startup things. It was laundry detergent, it was toilet paper, things that
spices,
that
bags.
you'd only buy, once every couple months probably, but we had to buy it because there wasn't any in the Airbnb. So we spent $23.64 Canadian on that kind of stuff, which is $17.88 American. And the last category was medicine.
Yes.
So I did go to the pharmacy, as I was mentioning, based on Paulette's recommendation. And I spent $33 Canadian or $24.96 American on medicines. And again, one of the ones that I got, I don't remember the name of either of them now. I'm sure I bought a 2-month supply. Like they only had a big container of it. So that was a big part of the $25 US approximately was this one particular medicine, where I wanted like the blister packs where I could just pop 2 or 3 out if I really needed them, and I think I got like the 50 or 60 dose.
It's comparable to what we would see here though, because I just bought Tylenol. And we buy Advil on a fairly regular basis. It's anywhere from $18 to $30 if you go to Shoppers, depending on the quantity and the strengths. So really, I think it is
similar.
comparable to what you would expect here. Just language was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. So a little bit about our accommodation. So we did do an Airbnb. We went to a place we had been to before just because we knew it had strong internet, which was something we needed because we were working when we were there. And it had a couple bedrooms. We knew we were going to have visitors, and it was in a nice area. And basically, we were happy with the Airbnb. The downside to it is it's not a cheap Airbnb. So it was about $3,000 Canadian for the month.
Yep.
So if you were Airbnb-ing it in San Miguel, if I added the 3,000 Canadian plus the approximately 1,500 Canadian that we spent while we were there for the month, it was $4,500 Canadian a month to be there. So not surprising. I mean, I think about if we were to fly to Cuba for a week, as an example, as a couple, you're in around the exact same cost. It's $4,000 to $5,000 to get away if you're a snowbird for a week, and we did it in Mexico for a month.
Yes.
So when you look at it that way, it was very reasonably priced for 30 days to get away. And if you were looking at actually living there, which is which is what we're trying to figure out on our own here, you wouldn't have that $3,000 a month. You would either do a long-term rental that would be a whole lot cheaper,
Yes.
like probably less than half that cost,
Yep.
or you're possibly buying a property there and then you have no monthly cost for the property in terms of rent anyways. You would have some upkeep.
Yes.
So yeah, interesting. So about 1,500 Canadian or 1,200 US is what we could comfortably live on and eat out about half the time, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So I think we could do it a whole lot cheaper. There are a bunch of other expenses in there that if we were living there, I did not factor in. Insurance, whether it be car insurance, medical insurance, all of that kind of stuff, which can be pricey, is not factored into kind of our 1 month stay in San Miguel.
Well, and as most of our viewers know, we have 2 dogs, and dogs are very expensive to have in Canada. We didn't factor in any of what the costs would be if the dogs were there.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So it's not an apples to apples, but it certainly gave us a good feel for how much money we would need if we wanted to live down there. And so I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's certainly not outside of the range of possibility in terms of our retirement income. And yeah. So overall, a couple thoughts just to summarize our trip. I think one thing that I found that's always drawn me to that area, and I'm sure it exists in other areas, is you do a lot of walking.
Yep.
So the actual lifestyle, from my perspective, is different when you're down there. So my phone tracks my steps, and I can look back over the last number of months. And the month of January, my steps are like 3 times as many as they are when I'm living up here in Canada. Also, the other thing I found is when I was there for a month, now sickness could be a part of this, but I lost about 10 pounds when I was there for the month of January. Yes. I've been back here for about 20 days. Almost all of that I've put back on again. So there is a real lifestyle component to living there. Like you finish work for the day, it's nice outside, you want to go outside, you want to go for a walk. We don't have that ability in Canada, or at least we have that ability, but it's not as comfortable or as easy to do, definitely in the winter, as it is if you're living in Mexico. So that was one of my takeaways. That's what really draws me there, is I'll call it the quality of life. And I know some people will argue with me on that and say you can do all those things right where you are in Canada, and I do agree. Mm-hmm. I just think that from a weather perspective and the ease of doing some of that, and it might be the newness of it as well, that I'd be more likely to do it if I was living there than living here.
I would agree 100% with that too. I had actually my physical, and I was like, I don't even want to see the number as far as weight goes, because my weight went right back up, and yet I too had been working at keeping my steps, and even though we were eating out a lot, I wasn't really gaining during the time that we were away. And to your point about being able to do it here, we can do it here. I have a very, very warm winter coat. My boots are good for -1,000,000, and I have proper mitts and hats and scarves and all of those good things. But even with the dogs, you can't take them out for that long. And we would walk for a good hour and think nothing of it, whereas you could not do that in the wintertime here. Like this morning, it was it felt like -1,000,000, but at least -15. And it was a short walk with the dogs and coming back home. So yeah, you could do that probably 6 times a day, but I'm not going to not get all the stuff on and take all the stuff off. So yes, I think, to your point, you could try and have that lifestyle here, but there it just seems so much more easy to get your groceries on your walk, or pick up a treat, because we would do that, pick up a pastry or go and have coffee. Each one of the little areas seemed to have groceries. They had the convenience stores. They had a coffee shop. They had those points of interest within their own little colonias. And you don't see that as much here. We have the suburbs and you have houses. That's what's there. You may have a park, and I was running with a friend this summer, and the parks here were largely unpopulated after and around the dinner time. So they're not the collection of people spending time there that you see.
Well, we very much have a automobile culture.
Yes. Well, and so
Right.
there's such space, but there's space there too.
Yeah, there is. It's
So-
just, it's more of a walking culture. And this could very much be just a San Miguel thing, because it would not be easy to drive there because of the cobblestone narrow streets.
But it's not easy to walk there either.
No, that's true. But you're more inclined to walk, because there's no way you'd want to. If it was only a 15-minute walk, you wouldn't take your car to that supermarket. You would definitely walk it, because it wouldn't be worth the trouble of taking the car for that short of a drive, right?
So as a funny aside, I have to admit, a lot of people in that culture are shorter. I am short. I'm only 5'2". And generally, as a general rule, I feel kind of tall, which makes me feel really, really good. I started looking at women's footwear when we were doing a lot of the walking. And you see a lot of the elevator sneakers, which makes sense because of the cobblestones. I don't have a pair, but I thought, oh, I might do that the next time, because wearing heels, and some did, especially, you know, if it was a special occasion like New Year's, you saw some heels, some wedge heels, but these platform elevated sneakers with the base of the shoe like this deep certainly would add a couple of inches onto my height, and I still think you would have the stability. I might break my ankles still, but I thought that was a fun aside.
You have
for the
a
walking.
further distance to fall.
You do. And the other thing I thought...
I mean, if you have the high shoes.
Oh, I know, but it's fashion, right? The other thing that we didn't see are Blundstones. Like here, I've got 2 pair. Most of the people I know have at least 1 pair. And I didn't see another set of Blundstones
Just different.
on anybody. So I was, scoping out people's footwear. Just as, okay, if this is going to be a lifestyle, I have an impressive shoe collection. How would I whittle it down, and what would I be swapping it out for? So maybe that's a good episode. That would be a really good episode.
You could
Next
do that
good
one on your
footwear.
own, because I only have 1 pair of running shoes that I wear
And you
every
brought them.
season.
Yeah,
Yes,
you brought them with
I did.
you. That's
I
true.
did.
That's true.
Well, let's wrap up. So thank you for watching. Again, if you'd like to help us out with the costs of the YouTube channel, you can click on Buy Me a Coffee down below in the comments. That would be one way of doing it. Certainly subscribing if you enjoyed the content. That would be appreciated as well. Yeah, so we had a good month away.
And before we go, I just want to throw in, I know you always hate it when I do this. What was your big takeaway, though, for a next step after doing the month? Because that was one of our goals. We checked that box. Where do you think we should go from here?
Where should we go? We should move.
Should we test it out for a year, though? Should that be our next big milestone?
We've been back and forth on this conversation between renting or buying.
Yes.
And what would be the right thing to do, and do you sell everything and move? This is the year-long conversation we've had on the YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
Do you sell everything, pick up your life, and just move? Or do you rent out your house here in your home country and just rent down there for a year and see if it's really for you?
Yep.
And I don't know if we've solved that mystery yet. I don't know if the month away, all it did for me was prove to me that it's
longer.
It's financially possible. It is something I certainly enjoyed. I do like San Miguel, although there may be other spots that we would find that we'd ultimately land in.
Yep.
But I think it was more this past trip an affirmation that, yeah, this probably is the right thing to do. How we go about it is still a little bit up in the air.
But would you want to go for longer next time?
Yeah. No, I think the next step is to go for a year. That's the thing to do. I think when you're there for a month or 2 months, you still have that vacation-like feel.
Yep.
Although I think at the tail end of the month, I wasn't feeling
You were not.
I mean, I
feeling well
worked all the
either.
way through it, and so did you as well. So it was different. It certainly wasn't a vacation where you just woke up and the day was yours to do what you wanted.
True.
I mean, I was up at 6 to sign on to work every morning, and because of the time difference, I was lucky in that regard. Kind of by mid-afternoon, 2, 3 o'clock, I could stop working and enjoy a good 5, 6 hours of sunlight,
True.
which we can't do here in the winter. So yeah, I think the next step really would be to give it a try for a year. I'm just not sure how that looks yet.
Well, we can explore it with all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'll try and wrap up again. We will see everybody later. Please subscribe. And as I said, feel free to buy us a coffee because it's minus 15 in Canada today and we need something warm.
That's true. Hot chocolate. Thanks again.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.